And I'm going to start by recognizing myself and Ranking Member Albio Sirius to present our opening statements. Without objection, the members of the subcommittee can submit their opening remarks for the record. And now I yield my time, myself, as much time as I might consume. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today in convening this hearing on the humanitarian crisis that has been unfolding as a result of thousands of unoccupied children showing up at our border. President Obama and his political spin team in the White House are calling this a humanitarian situation. I visited a location where these children are being held in Nogales, Arizona. I saw children as young as 4, essentially warehoused, and I can tell you it's not a situation, it's a crisis. Not only have relevant agencies been overwhelmed, but our national security has been put at risk as the border security resources have been diverted to deal with the crisis. Virtually all of the 140 volunteers from the Customs and Border Patrol that are at this facility are volunteers who have left basically the border to take care of these children. In the last 8 months, over 47,000 unaccompanied minors have been apprehended at our border. In the first part of this fiscal year, Border Patrol has seen a 700% increase in children coming from El Salvador alone. And illegally, a 930% increase in children coming from Guatemala, and a 1,200% increase in children coming illegally from Honduras compared to all of 2009. When I toured the warehouses in Nogales, I couldn't help but ask, how many children didn't make it? How many became ill, were sold into prostitution, were murdered, and never made it to the border? Since the magnitude of this crisis began hitting the airwaves, we've heard the administration scramble to describe all the push and the pull factors, all of which are indeed contributing factors. What's missing from the administration is a clear statement repudiating the president's own declaration in the Rose Garden back in 2012 he would no longer enforce elements of our immigration laws, which has been the primary impetus for the massive increase in unaccompanied minors arriving illegally on our doorstep. Talk of President Obama's decision to flout U.S. immigration law spread like wildfire through the region and very clearly prompted mothers and fathers in Central America to do the unthinkable: send their children on a dangerous voyage at the mercy of human traffic smugglers and criminals. These children were lured by rumors that they would receive permisos at the border, allowing them to stay. Rumors originating with the president's own deferred action directive. The fact is, President Obama's unwillingness to enforce immigration law and secure our borders not only impacts the security of U.S. citizens, but has had the immoral effect of incentivizing young, vulnerable children to risk their lives and suffer untold dignities rather than stay with their families where they belong. Encouraging children to make a dangerous trek and then warehousing them away from their families is definitely not compassionate. The right and moral thing to do is reunite these children with their families in the home countries while helping those countries create conditions for security and opportunity, and I think we have a responsibility to work with those countries to get that done. But the first step has to be taken by this administration, is for President Obama to make a public appearance to walk back his continued flouting of U.S. immigration and border security policy and tell the world that the United States will protect its borders while discouraging families from risking their lives and the lives of their children unnecessarily. Press releases and letter to regional heads of state are not going to be sufficient. Public diplomacy efforts have got to be robust. The president must own his substantial role in creating this crisis. It is the morally correct thing to do, and I really hope he will. Second, we've got to take immediate steps to send those children to their country of origin to be reunited with their families. Failure to act quickly and return these kids is going to cause even more children to risk that perilous trip north. Right now, they're paying about $5,000 to $8,000 a piece. Think of how much that represents of a person's income that lives in Honduras or El Salvador. It probably represents an entire year for them. And if they are seeing by our actions that those efforts are going to be fruitless and that's going to be a waste of money, it's going to stop. Now, following these immediate steps, we have to look at the conditions in our hemisphere that create this kind of abject desperation that would drive a parent to send their small children far away from home in search of a better life. We spent time on this subcommittee looking at the insecurity that plagues Central America, the criminality fused by transnational criminal organizations and gangs, and the lack of economic opportunity that is made worse by these realities. I convened this hearing today because I want to work with state and USAID to find better and more effective ways to help the countries of Central America to combat this scourge of criminality and to empower economic growth and opportunity. The dangerous level of criminality is absolutely a major contributing factor to this shocking uptick in unaccompanied minors making this dangerous trip to escape the growing violence in the Northern Triangle. Honduras has the highest murder rate in the world, with El Salvador and Guatemala ranked 4th and 5th. Reports from Honduras and El Salvador reveal that children are increasingly forced to participate in gang and criminal activities. We need to take a hard look at specific CARSI programs to evaluate if they've been truly effective at combating the scourge of narcotics trafficking and criminal enterprises. Mexico is affected by the growing violence in Central America just as we are. We've got to find ways to get Mexico to take a bigger role in helping Central American nations in partnership with the United States. And to that end, I'd like to see an itemized accounting of the types of USAID programs being employed in the region and an honest assessment of whether or not they're working. This is a crisis. In addition, I'd like to convey my frustration that over the last 18 months, we've conducted several hearings on the region and specifically the challenges and opportunities faced in the Western Hemisphere. Yet, not one of the individuals testifying before this committee mentioned the developing situation of dramatically increasing numbers of minors fleeing the Northern Triangle and crossing our border. While the media is now highlighting this crisis, the fact is the administration knew about this months ago and frankly failed to put in place adequate resources to address the flow or develop a comprehensive response to the growing crisis. Finally, earlier this year, when Secretary Kerry was testifying before the full committee, I lamented the lack of action the Western Hemisphere was receiving from the administration. I went on to ask him if he believed with all the crises around the globe, if spending scarce resources on solar panels and abortion pills in Guatemala were the best use of taxpayer dollars. To my utter surprise, the Secretary responded that climate change was the most significant crisis facing our country and the globe. With all due respect, this situation of unaccompanied minors fleeing their homeland is an immediate crisis that demands an immediate response that focuses on development and jobs over pet environmental projects. And to that end, when the money became available in the region from the closure of Ecuador and Bolivia missions, those funds should have been retargeted towards addressing this UAC crisis, not spent on environmental intervention in Colombia, a middle-income nation. Now is the time for USAID and state to make judicious use of taxpayers' hard-earned money to help empower the people of these affected countries economically, to help them find ways to diversify their crops, to attract foreign investment, to encourage entrepreneurialism and economic freedom over a life of criminality and violence. I'm honored that the Speaker appointed me to the congressional task force he constituted to look for solutions for this humanitarian crisis. I look forward to working with my colleagues and the administration to craft a swift, fair, appropriate, and compassionate response to the crisis so we can get these children home with their families on a path to a more prosperous and secure region. I'm grateful to both Mr. Palmieri and Mr. Lopez for coming before this committee today, and I look forward to a constructive discussion on what we can do to mitigate the humanitarian crisis unfolding at our doorstep. And I will now recognize the ranking member for his opening remarks.